All right, y'all. Peace and love to everybody out there.
What am I supposed to say?
Peace, family, something.
Hello.
There you go. We're back with another video, and today we have a very special video. I found this new YouTube channel called The Black Culture Unlocked. They have a lot of gems that they post on there, a lot of things that I didn't even know. The video today is called The Dark Truth: Why the U.S. Government Murdered Fred Hampton. Brother Fred Hampton was the leader of the Black Panther Party, as we all know. Many of us know he was murdered by the police and the government, the CIA,
FBI.
all of them. Yeah, shot and killed in his home while another dude drugged him.
Different video today. We wanted to come with some educational content. If you like videos like this, or you guys want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, comment, and share. And if you learned something in this video, comment down below what you learned, okay? Let's get into it. Boom!
You can kill a revolutionary,
wait.
but you can't kill the revolution. These were the words of Fred Hampton, who was a 21-year-old leader, a visionary, and a revolutionary. A man whose voice shook the foundations of American power, so much so that the United States government decided he had to die. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a hidden part of history. History, as we know, is written by the victors. In this video, we are going to expose the truth that has been rephrased to some fiction that's nothing close to the truth. Imagine a quiet apartment in Chicago. The clock reads 4:45 a.m. Shadows move outside the window. Inside, Fred Hampton sleeps next to his pregnant fiancée, Deborah Johnson. The air is heavy, silent, until bam! The door crashes open. Gunfire erupts. Bullets fly all around the room like oxygen.
Wow.
Walls shatter and furniture splinters, and over 100 bullets were fired. The Panthers inside barely have time to react. It's not a raid, it's execution. In the chaos, Fred Hampton never even wakes up. He was drugged the night before the incident, leaving him unconscious. Yes, drugged. By whom, you may wonder? An FBI informant. Two officers stood over his unconscious body. One checks his pulse and says, "He's still alive." The other officer raises his gun, releases another bullet, and utters, "He's good and dead now." That's exactly what happened on a fateful
Point blank.
Here's the question. Why would the United States government, one of the most powerful entities in the world, be afraid of a 21-year-old black man from Chicago?
He was young still. He was young.
20-year-old black
21.
man. 21-year-old black man from Chicago.
But started, of course, a lot younger. And was doing so much. He was super
That's
young.
wild, because we're
22.
I'm gonna be 23 next month. That
Yeah, I remember.
wow. And he was only 21, and he, like, the impact, the power, like, that's that's dope right there.
Fred Hampton such a big threat that he had to be eliminated? Was it because he was violent? Was it because he was leading riots? Not. Fred Hampton's real crime was that he was doing something far more dangerous in the eyes of the U.S. government. He was uniting black people together. Think about this. What if black people, white people, Latinos, and poor people of all backgrounds suddenly stopped fighting each other and started fighting together against the system that is keeping them down? That's exactly what Fred Hampton was doing. We're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism. We're going to fight capitalism with socialism. He spoke of real change, not just for black people, but for all oppressed people. He organized free breakfast programs for children while the government let them starve. He created free health
That's how the
clinics
free lunch
while
system
hospitals
started in
refused
public
to serve the
schools.
poor. He formed the Rainbow Coalition. It was a multiracial movement of Black Panthers, white Appalachian activists, Latino street groups, and anyone who was willing to stand against oppression. And that's what made him a threat. The government was not afraid of black men with guns, rather they were afraid of black men with power. Black men who could think, organize, educate, and unite. Let's be clear, this was not just a police raid gone wrong type of situation. This was a state-sanctioned murder. The FBI, the Chicago Police Department, and the United States government conspired to silence Fred Hampton forever. In this video, we are going to show how the FBI spied on and infiltrated the Black Panther Party, how a paid informant drugged Fred Hampton the night before the raid, how the government used the media to cover up the truth, and most importantly, how this same system is still in place today. So before we move forward, ask yourself this: what kind of leader does America fear today? And what are they willing to do to stop them? Let's begin.
Strong
Fred
black
Hampton was a
leader.
young, charismatic leader who had the power to unite the oppressed across racial lines, shake the foundations of systemic oppression, and lead a revolution that threatened the status quo of America. But on December 4th, 1969, the U.S. government made sure Fred Hampton would never see another sunrise. Fred Hampton was more than just a leader. He was more than just an activist. He was a force so powerful, so electrifying, that in just 21 short years, he became one of the most dangerous men in America. But not because he carried a gun, not because he called for violence, but because he was uniting people of diverse races, poor and working class, all under a common cause: revolution. And that's why the United States government needed him dead. To further grasp how a young man from the streets of Chicago became an enemy of the state, we have to go back to where it all began. Fred Hampton was born in 1948 in a segregated world that saw black people as second-class citizens, a world where Jim Crow laws still reigned, where lynchings were still prevalent, and where a black child's future was predetermined before they even learned how to walk. His parents were hard-working people from Louisiana, part of the great migration of black families escaping the South's violent racism, only to find a different kind of racism in the North. Fred grew up in Maywood, Illinois, just outside Chicago, a neighborhood where black families lived under the constant watch of an oppressive system. Even as a child, Fred stood out from his peers, not just because he was smart, but he was brilliant, excelling in school and athletics. Not just because he was a leader, though his classmates already gravitated toward him, but because even at a young age, Fred Hampton had a deep sense of justice. He saw the way black kids were treated differently in school. He saw how the police harassed and brutalized his community. And he knew, even then, that something had to change. Growing up, he was heavily influenced by two of the most powerful voices of black liberation in America, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. He meticulously studied their words, he understood their strategies, and he saw something that many others overlooked. These two men, despite their different approaches, were fighting the same war. The war against white supremacy, the war against oppression, the war against a system designed to keep black people powerless. But Fred Hampton also saw their fates. Malcolm X was assassinated in 1965. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968. And that only intensified his fire. If the government was willing to kill those who spoke the truth, then the truth must be dangerous. By 1968, Fred Hampton had fully stepped into the fight. He joined the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party.
Damn, he only
and
died
within
a year
months,
after
he had done something no one expected.
They
He
killed
rose to the
three
top, not because he was
in
the
less than
loudest or the
10
most violent, but because he was the most brilliant
That's
strategist and
I was just taking
organizer
him out.
the Panthers had ever seen.
They were just
That
slaughtering.
shows
Fred
how much
understood
power
that
we
revolution
have,
was
like-
not just about guns and
Wow.
slogans. A revolution was about building something real for the people. So, under his leadership, the Chicago Black Panthers launched some of the most effective community programs in the country.
That's what we need to
The free
do,
breakfast program, where they fed thousands of hungry children every single morning. Free medical
government
clinics that
can-
provided health care to
Man.
those who couldn't afford it.
And
political
healthcare.
education classes that taught
And I
black
bet you
people
they
their
weren't-
rights,
none of them
their
were rich.
power, and their history.
He was teaching
And
them
that
political
terrified the U.S.
education.
government because they knew that when people are educated, when they are fed, when they are taken care of, they become impossible to control. They become revolutionary.
Yeah.
And Fred Hampton wasn't just building a movement, he was building an army of conscious minds. Fred Hampton's ability to bring others into the fight made him truly dangerous. Fred Hampton saw something that the U.S. government feared most. Race was a tool used to divide poor and oppressed people. And if those people ever realized they had a common enemy, the system itself, the system would fall. So, He did something that had never been done before. He created the Rainbow Coalition. Not just Black Panthers, but the Young Lords, a Puerto Rican revolutionary group. The Young Patriots were poor white Southerners who had migrated to Chicago and were struggling under the same system. Street gangs, activists, and radicals of all races came together under one umbrella in pursuit of a single goal: to take down the oppressive system that was keeping them all in chains. The U.S. government had always been afraid of black resistance, but they had never faced a leader who could unite all races against them. That's when J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI made their decision. Fred Hampton had to be eliminated. You can jail a revolutionary, but you can't jail the revolution. You can run a freedom fighter out of the country, but you can't run freedom out of the country. And you can kill a revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution. Fred Hampton's voice was powerful, too powerful. And just like they did with Malcolm X, just like they did with Martin Luther King Jr., the United States government made sure Fred Hampton would never wake up on December 4th, 1969. Fred Hampton lived for the people. He died for the people. And yet his words, his ideas, his revolution, they still live on. While the government succeeded in killing the man, they could never kill the movement. And today, more than ever, we must remember who Fred Hampton was. Because his story is not just history.
What dark spot facts do we need to know?
So many people think sunspots are from the sun. In fact, they have nothing to do with
history. It is a lesson of how power operates, a lesson in how revolutionaries are silenced, and a lesson in why we must never stop fighting for the truth. It's surprising, but what if I told you the United States government launched an illegal war against its citizens? Not just any citizens, but black leaders of the time, men and women who dared to organize, educate, and fight back against systemic oppression. They weren't killed by criminals, they weren't taken down by rival groups, but they were hunted down by the FBI, which ought to protect them. This was COINTELPRO, the most dangerous government operation you were ever supposed to know about. And Fred Hampton, he was at the top of the hit list. Let's talk about COINTELPRO to fully understand why.
The Kyrie with the vid, and then the YouTube link, they try to put that label on him that is anti-Semitic. And then there's the Yay, they froze his accounts.
There's Nick Cannon at one point.
Yeah, they scared him away from talking about, Black Power.
Yeah.
Threatened to take all his money and all the networks away from him.
Even Nipsey, he was changing gang culture. Yeah. He was really uniting us, and he was just seeing a different way.
Getting black people jobs, giving felon jobs.
And having them look at the situation and flip it to a business and, really unite and work together.
You can still be a gang member, but let's focus on being a businessman and
capitalizing,
crypto and Bitcoin.
And he was just so ahead.
Yeah.
So just those things right there, those men, that's powerful. Changing. Yeah. I feel like if Nip was still present here today, it would help a lot. It would be so different right now. As far as our community, I feel a lot. Even the Dr. Savy documentary that he was supposed to be dropping as well, that's unheard of. I guess Nick Cannon, remember, he was supposed to pick it up, but it's now it's just in the air.
When I get some money, let me get some money. We're doing Nipsey Hussle and Dr. Savy.
You gotta finish that.
Finishing
especially
the Dr. Savy.
His project, that definitely needs to get finished. That needs to come out, but
Hampton was assassinated. COINTELPRO, or Counterintelligence Program, was a covert FBI operation that was designed to infiltrate, sabotage, and destroy any group that challenged the American power structure. And at the center of it all was one man, J. Edgar Hoover, FBI director from 1924 to 1972. J. Edgar Hoover wasn't just the director of the FBI, he was the architect of America's war on black liberation. Under Hoover's orders, COINTELPRO went far beyond mere surveillance. It used deception, psychological warfare, and outright violence to eliminate black leaders. In a 1967 memo, Hoover wrote that the FBI must do everything possible to prevent the rise of a black messiah. Let me say that again. The FBI feared the emergence of a black leader so powerful that they could unite the people and lead them to true liberation. And so, the U.S. government made a decision. Every black leader had to be neutralized. Malcolm X was targeted, surveilled, and later assassinated. Martin Luther King Jr. was spied on, harassed, and later murdered. Fred Hampton, he was next in line. Unlike Malcolm and Martin, Fred wasn't just leading the black movement. He was uniting all oppressed people of different races and social classes into one revolution. The U.S. government perceived this revolution as dangerous and a threat to their system. That made him the greatest threat of all, even greater than Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr.
Wow.
Hoover labeled the Black Panther Party the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States. Not because they were criminals or violent, but because they were feeding hungry children. Yes, that's right.
Feeding
They were
hungry
doing what
children.
the government
What a
refused to
sad-
do, helping their people.
sad
And that's
person
why
to do
the
that.
FBI had to shut them down. The FBI didn't just target Fred Hampton. They waged a full-scale psychological war on the Black Panther Party. They did it in 3 ways. The FBI infiltrated the group by planting informants and spies inside the Black Panthers. People pretended to be loyal members but were feeding information back to the government. One of the worst cases was William O'Neill. He wasn't just any informant. He was Fred Hampton's bodyguard. O'Neill gave the FBI the blueprint of Fred's apartment. And the night before the raid, he drugged Fred's drink so he wouldn't wake up when the police stormed in. That's not just infiltration. That's premeditated murder. Secondly, the FBI knew that sometimes you don't have to kill a movement, you just have to divide it with psychological warfare and spreading misinformation. So they
They're doing
sent
now.
fake letters to Black Panther leaders. These letters were designed to cause mistrust, jealousy, and internal conflict among the group. They wrote fake death threats. They spread rumors that leaders were FBI informants, which led to deadly confrontations between the Panthers themselves. It was a classic divide and conquer strategy, and it worked. Another
So
strategy.
basically, that's like me being a part of the Black Panthers, and say this dude behind me is an FBI informant. He's telling me like, "Hey James, I think this dude over there is an FBI informant." But he's just a part of the Black Panther Party. He's not even a real FBI informant. That dude telling me he's the real FBI informant. So they're just trying to get all of them to not trust each other, to question like, oh shit, is he really FBI informant? Oh shit, like, oh. So
Miss your trust,
and then I can only imagine what type of letters that they were sending out to make them not trust each other and stuff.
And when there's no trust, there's no unity. You
Yeah.
can't unite with someone you truly like don't trust.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and then
that's
you'll be
big.
willing to backstab them now because it's like, okay, this person might be, or you'll be willing to hurt them.
Yeah.
And then now it causes fights and all.
Friction.
You might be
yeah.
an FBI informant, and then now he's going to blame you for being one because he knows for sure he isn't one.
Now everybody's tripping. That's why they
Yeah.
saw psychological warfare. Like they had them all like just all over the place. But yeah, that's crazy.
Was the use of the media. The FBI controlled
But you
the
see why
media.
you just can't
They
let
gave false
anybody
stories
in,
to
but at the same
newspapers,
time you want
painting
to
the
let
Panthers
anybody
as
in.
violent
So
extremists
it's like
and
hard.
criminals. They called them black extremists. They called them domestic terrorists. Does that sound familiar? It should ring a
They call
bell.
Richard
Because
Obama
these
black
same
extremists.
tactics are still being used today. The media has always been the government's greatest weapon. And for the Black Panthers, they were the first victims of modern media propaganda.
Yeah.
Beyond being a leader, Fred Hampton was a threat to the system because he was doing what Malcolm and Martin had yet to do. He brought street gangs together, revolutionaries and working class people, to fight against the real enemy, the government that kept them all oppressed. And that's when COINTELPRO made its move. The FBI didn't just want Fred Hampton arrested, they wanted him dead. And they orchestrated the entire thing. They used an informant to locate Fred's apartment, drugged him so he wouldn't fight back, barged into his home at 4:45 a.m., and executed him in his deep sleep. After the assassination, the FBI and police tried to cover their tracks. They
people
claimed
are
the Panthers
criminals.
started the shootout. They
The
claimed it was
FBI
self-defense,
government
but the
is
evidence
criminal.
tells a different story. About 100 bullets were fired. Only
Oh my
one bullet
gosh.
came from the Panther's gun. This wasn't a shootout. This was a government-sanctioned assassination. And Fred Hampton's blood was on the hands of the FBI. COINTELPRO did not end with Fred Hampton. The government still uses these strategies today. Surveillance, infiltration, psychological warfare.
Yeah.
They are still afraid of unity because they know a united people cannot be controlled, nor can
Rap music, the media, social media, Instagram, and things like that.
Food, our products, like this.
So
is
now
like,
it's different type of information. The BT entertainment things, it's
Yeah.
women fighting and it's
the
like
man cheating.
Yeah.
There's the whole family structure is
super
just,
feminine dude.
Yeah, like it just
Yeah.
really demasculinizes the man.
So they're just infiltrating us in another way. It's still COINTELPRO, but they're just doing it to us in another way.
Now it's more on like, I feel like a family spectrum too, because like now a lot of women are more independent, and so like, oh, I don't need a man.
Yeah.
No man, there's no babies. That's how you slowly.
No unity.
That's how species become extinct. They can no longer populate. Now you populate with a different breed. Now that's a mixed breed. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying that's how you die out a race.
be defeated. And that is why Fred Hampton had to die, because he wasn't just building a movement, he was building a revolution. Fred Hampton's legacy lives on, but the war is not over. Betrayal. It has always been the debt in war. And make no mistake, the U.S. government was at war
Instead
with
of
black
smiling next to their
liberation.
body, that's
But
crazy.
they didn't fight with guns and bombs. They fought with spies,
Who's
lies, and
great
psychological
grandpa is that?
warfare.
I mean,
No.
They didn't just kill Fred Hampton. They tried to stop the movement. As if infiltrating his movement wasn't enough, they turned his people against him, and they used a traitor, a man Fred trusted with his life, to set him up for assassination. This is how the FBI's web of deception destroyed the Black Panther Party from the inside. J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, had one agenda in mind: to shatter the Black Panther Party before it became too powerful. And to do that, he needed to get in among them. COINTELPRO wasn't just about spying, it was about poisoning movements from the inside. Because Hoover knew the truth. A revolution can't be stopped from the outside. It has to be destroyed from within, and that's exactly what the FBI did. The FBI planted informants inside the Panthers, people who pretended to be loyal, who marched, chanted, and carried guns alongside revolutionaries. But what happened behind the scenes? They were feeding classified information back to the government. They weren't Panthers, they were traitors. William O'Neill was just 20 years old when he became an FBI informant. How did the FBI recruit him?
20.
They caught him stealing cars, and instead of locking him up, they made him a deal: work for us or go to prison. And O'Neill took the deal. And just like that, he became the government's inside man. O'Neill didn't just spy on the Panthers. He climbed the ranks, gaining Fred Hampton's trust. He became Hampton's bodyguard. He had access to top meetings, security plans, and most importantly, Fred's apartments. All while secretly meeting with FBI agents, feeding them information about what has been happening among the group. But he wasn't just a spy, he was a saboteur. His job wasn't just to spy on the Panthers, it was to destroy them from the inside. The FBI knew that to break the Panthers, they had to turn them against each other. So they started sending fake letters. They wrote letters pretending to be one Panther leader, threatening another. They spread false rumors that members were FBI informants. They spurred up jealousy, paranoia, and betrayal among them. Brothers turned against brothers. Panthers stopped trusting each other, and the movement started to crack. Fred Hampton wasn't just leading the Panthers. He was uniting Chicago's street gangs into a revolutionary force. This move terrified the FBI, so they sent a fake letter to the leader of the Blackstone Rangers, which was a powerful gang in Chicago at the time.
Oh, that's what
The letter claimed Fred Hampton was plotting to kill him. It was a complete lie, but the goal was clear: start a war. Get the Panthers and the gangs to kill each other off so the government wouldn't have to do it themselves.
today.
what are
This
we
was
doing
strategic
today?
psychological
today,
warfare at its
different
peak, and it was working.
types of gangs
William
want to
O'Neill's
each
final
other.
mission
Ooh,
was
wait,
his
let me pause
deadliest.
it. That's why Nipsey was a key, a key element to everything, because he was uniting gang culture as well, and that's something they don't want to see as well. So
Kendrick did it.
Kendrick, he's doing that now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's talked about it for years in his lyrics. He's said it multiple times, but yeah.
On December 3rd, 1969, O'Neill cooked dinner for Fred Hampton and the other Panthers. What they didn't know was that O'Neill had drugged Fred's drink. That night, Fred fell into a deep drug-induced sleep. A powerful sedative was slipped into Hampton's dinner so that he wouldn't be able to fight. He wouldn't be able to defend
Bro, I was
himself.
gonna shoot him 100 times.
He slept so deep that when the FBI stormed his apartment hours later, he never woke up. At 4:45 a.m. on December 4th, 1969, the Chicago police and FBI launched a military-style raid on Fred Hampton's apartment, where they fired about 100 bullets. Fred Hampton was shot twice in the head while he lay in bed. He was murdered in his sleep, and William O'Neill helped make it happen. Fred Hampton didn't just end up dead. He was targeted. He was watched. He was betrayed by someone he trusted. In the early hours of December 4th, 1969, he was executed in his bed. After Fred's assassination, the FBI and Chicago police lied to the public. They gave a false narrative, claiming there was a violent shootout. They said the Panthers attacked first, but the bullet holes told the truth. This wasn't a shootout, but an execution. William O'Neill lived with that guilt for the rest of his life. Years later, in an interview, O'Neill tried to justify himself. He claimed he was just doing his job. He further added that he was caught between two worlds. But the truth, he was a blatant traitor. And in 1990, on Martin Luther King Jr., Day of All Days, William O'Neill committed suicide by running into oncoming traffic. Some say it was an accident, while others say it was his final attempt to escape the weight of his betrayal.
How do you run?
COINTELPRO wasn't just some tales of history. It was a blueprint. A blueprint that the government still uses today. The FBI destroyed black movements before, and they'll do it again if we refuse to stand up for the truth and for what is right. Because as long as black people dare to organize, as long as we dare to fight back, they will always try to turn us against each other. December 4th, 1969. It was still dark outside. The city of Chicago was asleep. But inside a modest apartment on 2337 West Monroe Street, the most chilling act of government-sanctioned murder was about to unfold. The Chicago Police Department, backed by the FBI, was on a mission to eliminate Fred Hampton. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was planned down to the smallest detail. The FBI had an inside man, William O'Neill. At 4:45 a.m., 14 heavily armed officers from the Chicago Police Department's tactical unit surrounded the building. These weren't just local cops. They were working under orders from the FBI's COINTELPRO. Inside the apartment, 7 Black Panther members were asleep, including Fred Hampton and his pregnant fiancée, Deborah Johnson.
Man, that's so crazy.
Then, without warning, the first gunshot rang, and following it was an explosion of gunfire. Bullets from the police guns caused windows to shatter, walls to splinter, and ripple through furniture, doors, and flesh. It was a war zone. Surprisingly, out of all the 100 bullets, only one came from the Panthers, and it wasn't even aimed at an officer. The truth about the whole situation is that the Panthers never even had a chance to fight back. The first victim of the raid was Mark Clark. He was on security duty that night, sitting near the front door when a police bullet tore through his chest, killing him instantly. His body slumped over. The shotgun in his lap discharged reflexively, firing into the ceiling. That was the only shot fired by the Panthers.
Wow.
Everything else was pure execution.
So that wasn't even
As
a
bullets
shot
shredded
fired
the
back.
apartment, Fred Hampton never even moved. He was completely unconscious from the drug William O'Neill had given
I
him.
don't know what drug it is.
Deborah Johnson later described the moment in chilling detail. In her words, "I shook Fred. He didn't wake up. I kept shaking him, but he wouldn't wake up." Bullets kept flying. Other Panthers screamed as they were shot, beaten, and dragged from the rooms. The officers stormed through the apartment, their weapons raised until they reached Fred Hampton's bedroom, and then the gunfire suddenly stopped. Because Fred was still alive, but not for long. "He's good and dead now," an officer said as two officers approached Hampton's motionless body. One of them, Officer Joe Gorman, looked down at the 21-year-old revolutionary. He was still breathing. That's when the most petrifying moment of the entire night happened. According to some survivors, one of the officers said, "Is he still alive?" Then the other officer raised his gun and pulled the trigger. Two close-range shots to the head, then came to the final words, "He's good and dead now." As the police began to spread their false narrative, the investigation proved otherwise. The majority of bullet holes were coming into the apartment, not out. Fred Hampton's bed was soaked in blood, but not a single bullet was fired from his room. He never even woke up. This wasn't a shootout. This was a state-sponsored execution. At 21, Fred Hampton was already perceived to be a dangerous young boy and a heavy threat by the U.S. government. His fighting cause made him dangerous and a threat to the government. And that's why on December 4th, 1969, they murdered him in his sleep. But here's the thing about revolutions. You can kill the revolutionary, but you can never kill the revolution. And yet, every newspaper ran with the police's version of events. It took weeks for the truth to come out. By then, the damage had been done. After the execution, officers did everything they could to cover up their crimes. They moved evidence. They rearranged Fred Hampton's body to make it look like he had been shooting back. They even went as far as planting weapons in the apartment. But the survivors refused to be silenced. They gave interviews. They showed reporters the real crime scene. Slowly, the truth started breaking through the lies. The assassination of Fred Hampton was a shock to the world.
That's crazy.
The Black Panther Party didn't just mourn, they fought back. They launched independent investigations. They exposed the FBI's involvement. Most importantly, they refused to let the government erase Hampton's legacy. Years later, FBI documents were declassified. They proved what the Panthers had been saying all along. Fred Hampton's assassination was ordered from the top. The FBI, Chicago police, and Cook County officials all worked together to eliminate him. J. Edgar Hoover's COINTELPRO program wasn't just about spying. It was about killing black leaders before they could transform the world. The morning after Fred Hampton's assassination, newspapers across America echoed the same story. Black Panthers engage in a violent shootout with police. The government wanted the public to believe that Fred Hampton and his comrades were dangerous criminals who got what they deserved.
There is a 100% cure for hearing loss if we can regrow this cell. If we had a tiny, tiny camera.
They called it a firefight. They called it self-defense. But what they didn't tell you was that Fred Hampton never fired a single shot. It was one of the most unbelievable acts of deception in American history. Fred Hampton was assassinated in 1969. But the tactics used to kill him never went away. They just got smarter, more subtle, and more covert. Unless we recognize history for what it is, it will keep repeating itself. Just hours after the raid, the Chicago Police Department held a press conference. They claimed they had no choice but to return fire when the Panthers shot at them first. They described a violent, chaotic battle where police barely made it out alive. This was a blatant
But
lie.
everybody that went in came out alive.
With so much undeniable proof, you might think that the people responsible for Fred Hampton's death would be brought to justice. And yet, despite all this evidence, no one was ever convicted. Fred Hampton's murder was just one piece of a much larger conspiracy. Not a single FBI agent or police officer ever spent a day in prison.
That's wild.
The U.S. justice system protected its criminals. Why? Because this wasn't just about Fred Hampton. It was about power. It was about sending a message. If you rise against the system, we will silence you. For years, the government stalled investigations. They buried evidence, destroyed files, and even lied under oath about their involvement. When the families of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark finally sued the government, It took them 13 years to win a settlement.
13 years.
The government paid out $1.85 million. But no one admitted guilt. No one apologized.
13 years?
Because to them, Fred Hampton's life was just collateral damage. However, COINTELPRO didn't end in the 70s. The government still uses these tactics today. They still control the narrative, demonize black leaders, and silence voices that challenge the system. Fred Hampton's story is not just history. It's a warning. A warning that the same forces that killed him are still in power today.
That video was wild, y'all. They really don't want any black messiahs, no real black leaders. That's exactly why they put certain people out in front of us so that we look up to those people and want to inspire to be like them. And it was keep creating the same type of people, which are black leaders.
Yeah.
Drug dealers and certain types of people.
Especially when it comes to demonizing leaders, demonizing people that are going against what the system has set up for us. Even like Kanye, like his freedom of speech, like
not smart. They always say they're dumb, like they're crazy.
Or they put these labels on certain things, like they're
Kyrie Irving. Those like, oh, you only went to you only went to college for a year. What are you talking? You don't know anything. Like, so they try to, they just like
belittle.
Try to act like these people aren't smart. That's what they try to do when people are strong, outspoken black men that aren't, you know, puppets.
Ooh, very informational, very deep, and I really like it connects with the world that we live in today. So if you guys can just take the time and see if you guys can call out the BS that's on the news, that's being broadcasted on, you know, media outlets. See if you're able to catch it, you know. But one thing is just that, you know, I feel like it's important to know things and perceive stuff the way you want to perceive it. And like think for yourself and have your own opinion. You know, it's good to look at outside sources, but at the end of the day, you should have your own outlook on how you look at certain situations and how you view it, because that matters. If you let a certain media outlet or other people's opinions, other outside noises influence you and influence your thoughts and influence your decisions, then you are being controlled.
Remember I used to not like Kanye West because of like, I used to not like pay attention to that, but I was leaning more towards like
what people were saying, like he's crazy and stuff.
I was like, he is crazy. But once I took the time to see, okay, let me see what he's actually saying and things in that. Charleston White, he does say a lot of stupid things, but like once you take the time to actually listen to him, it was like, okay, a lot of the stuff he's saying, you know, he is right. So you just have to take the time to actually, you know, listen to that person and make your own judgment. Come up to your own answer. And also, we watched this movie last night, and it brought me to this because it kept reliving like other lives and changing different things and stuff in that nature. But I was like, what if all the Black Panthers to go back and like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and they knew, okay, this is how they're gonna try to kill us through COINTELPRO and things in that nature. Not necessarily Malcolm, but I meant Martin,
prevent their
Malcolm
own assassination.
And see, like, what would they do different? Like that day, like, would he have like more security ready, more guns ready?
Would he have just not went to the show? Like,
well, but you would know, like, there's FBI agents working. So I'm like, what would they do different to not let FBI agents come
like
in?
Prevent it,
Or like, would they? Cause I appreciate y'all. This has been a long video. I appreciate y'all for watching. Please make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and comment down below what y'all think about the video and if you want us to do more videos like these.
All that said, y'all, have a blessed day.
Peace.